As director of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, I'll admit I've been peacefully arrested a dozen times for protesting fossil fuel companies. I've also led marches with thousands of people demanding wind and solar policies from state and federal lawmakers. And I'm a vegetarian because of global warming, and I power my house and my car with solar panels on my roof. In the climate movement, I'm as committed as they come. Many of my friends and colleagues, therefore, are now surprised when I tell them I fear we may have already lost the battle. The clean energy revolution, while fully underway and unstoppable, can no longer by itself save us from profound climate change. With alarming recent spikes in global temperatures and Donald Trump's return to the White House, we must heed scientists like Dr. James Hansen, who say we need to urgently research ways to reflect sunlight away from the planet. We need to think about a plan B, they say. The bullhorn-toting activist in me has resisted this idea for years. The concept of so-called geoengineering is not new, of course. The first major government study on global warming in 1965, under President Lyndon B. Johnson, recommended studying floating billions of white buoys across the world's oceans to reflect sunlight. And the 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines spewed so much light-reflecting sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere that it cooled the planet by a full degree Fahrenheit for more than a year. Could human beings safely disperse sulfur themselves using high-flying airplanes to become a quote-unquote human volcano? Hansen, our most famous and unnervingly accurate climate scientist and prophet for decades, says we should study it now as a possible option for future global leaders. We at CCAN have always believed that mass movement activism would eventually triumph totally over the dirty energy companies. The history of reform movements was on our side. So geoengineering? Seriously? Won't the carbon barons just keep burning their product and acidifying our oceans if we conveniently cool the planet for them through artificial means? And what of the sheer hubris of applying yet another techno fix to our endless energy and ecological problems? And what of the inevitable unintended consequences, large or small, of solar radiation modification, as it's called? All valid concerns, but several factors in recent years have flipped us towards supporting international research into light-reflecting techniques. We don't support actual deployment of any such method at scale. Only a careful and inclusive international treaty can do that. But research? Yes. Our conversion, ironically, begins with optimism around clean energy. The renewable power revolution, again, is unstoppable. No American president or Congress can derail it, though, yes, they can slow it down. But key U.S. states and the rest of the world will continue moving forward with or without Donald Trump. Every day, a whopping gigawatt of solar power is installed worldwide. That's the equivalent of a new nuclear power plant daily. And next year, half of all cars sold in China, the world's largest automobile fleet, will be electric. And Australia will get 80% of its electricity from carbon-free sources by 2030. Simply put, as a planet, we're not going back, and the days of fossil fuels are numbered. But here's the problem. We started way too late. Because of delay and deception from the fossil fuel industry, the full global conversion to clean energy is still decades away, and there's enough CO2 already in the atmosphere and more on the way to cook the planet. Indeed, since 2014, United Nations scientists have been calling for massive amounts of quote-unquote negative emissions as a vital supplement to clean energy and stabilizing the climate. We need giant machines for sucking carbon dioxide out of the air at scale, they say, or rock weatherization techniques that crush stones like basalt and then they bind with carbon in the air. None of these technologies, however, are anywhere close to being ready to scale up. So if we're tardy on clean energy and carbon direct air capture is in its infancy, and the world is today about to surpass the 1.5 degrees Celsius level of warming scientists say is a threat to all living things, then what? For me, a final argument for geoengineering research lies right outside my own front door. From dying oak trees to widespread Lyme disease to unprecedented flooding, climate change is wreaking havoc in my small city of Tacoma Park, Maryland, bordering Washington, D.C. Among other extraordinary and expensive measures here, my town just built a $45,000 flood berm to keep newly torrential rain from entering our local church and preschool again. My neighborhood is a reasonable proxy for every community on earth, including yours, with poorer communities suffering the most while contributing the least to the problem. So what can we do? In June 2023, the White House Office on Science and Technology offered guidelines for policymakers and scientists considering research into ways to reflect sunlight from Earth. The paper states that there are risks to geoengineering that could be reduced through careful study and limited testing. There are also risks to doing nothing, letting runaway climate change take its course. Balancing those risks as best we can is a central challenge for the world of the 2020s, the paper suggests. Personally, as I look out my own front door and read the daily climate news from places like Los Angeles, I believe the danger of not researching a possible Plan B is likely greater than the harrowing climate path ahead of us, the one our movement has fought so hard to avoid.